Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and one of the things we enjoy doing most is introducing you to the men and women who are helping to shape and lead Jewish life today. So I'm very pleased to be sitting with Farley Weiss, National President of National Council of Young Israel, and Farley is also the president of the law firm of Weiss and Moy in Scottsdale, Arizona, specializing in trademark and copyright law. Farley, thank you so much for sitting with us.
Mark, it's good to be here.
Thank you. By the way, you were from Arizona at one point?
I just moved to Florida in August.
Where are you in Florida?
Boca Raton.
Boca Raton, very, very lovely. Are you still involved with the law firm in Scottsdale?
Yes.
Okay. It's amazing how one can now work over long distances with internet and phones and things like that, yes?
It is unbelievable.
Yeah. So you're now you're the national president of Young Israel. Tell me how you got involved in Young Israel in general.
Young Israel started in Phoenix, Arizona, Young Israel of Phoenix. I was part of the founding group. I was asked to be first vice president of the Young Israel of Phoenix, and then ended up becoming president on 3 different occasions, 9 years in total over 3 different times. Wow. And fortunately, the shul did pretty well during my presidencies, and grew from 43 to 102 members the first time, and from 28 to close to 80 members the second time, and really those are the second and third times. The first time was a very short time I had as president, and so it had an experience with the Young Israel Shul, and then the executive director of the national board asked me to become a board member, and then I moved up the ranks over time.
Very lovely. Are you originally from Arizona?
So since I was 10 years old.
Aha. What's the Jewish community like in Scottsdale or Phoenix, Arizona?
I work in Scottsdale. There's, I think there's something like 8 Chabads.
No kidding.
And around the whole Jewish community area, Phoenix community area. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the United States. It's a very big city. There's over, I think, 115,000 Jews, I heard, in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Scottsdale, you're driving in Phoenix, all of a sudden you see a sign, you're in Scottsdale. Our office is in Scottsdale, and it's it's kind of a resort area, and it's a very many different Jews there, and a very politically active Jews, and also a pretty strong Orthodox community as it keeps growing there as well.
Are all the movements represented in Phoenix?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's.
Is it known as a liberal or a conservative community?
It matters which. I think they did when they did the election, the presidential elections. They did the 3 different schools at the time: Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. And Orthodox was much heavier for the Republican side, and the Reform school much heavier for the Democratic side. So it's.
So it spans the gamut.
It spans the gamut, and the community is very politically active, close to the. Really mostly the Republican senators and congressmen, and is more evenly split in the state, but they're close to pretty much all the politicians.
As you were growing up as a young person from 10 years old and older, what was the character of your own Jewish home?
My parents brought us up in pretty much a conservative home, and we had 2 sets of dishes, and we only had kosher meat in the house. And I became more observant in my late teens and then early 20s when I went to the University of Pennsylvania.
Did you become more observant after you went to school?
I became in my late teens. I started to eat only kosher meat outside the house, and then I became more observant of Shabbat and all the other laws.
Why, Farley?
Because I came to the belief that. There's a God in the world, that God gave us the 10 Commandments, gave us the Torah, and that especially that it's not just that He did this a long time ago, but that the fact of the miracle of the state of Israel today, that Israel overcame such overwhelming odds to win a war in 1948, to win a 6-day war, to to come back to a land after 2,000 years. And then it says in the Talmud that the land would be, in essence, vacant until the Jewish people come back and then grow again. And anyone who goes to Israel can see it blooming. It's a tremendous miracle. And Mark Twain said when he visited in the 1880s how vacant the land was. And just it's the miracle of the land of Israel and the people coming back. And to me, it's seeing God's hand in the world. And so I became a belief that God exists, that everything is not by chance, and that if God exists and He gave us the Torah and gave us the commandments, that I should follow them.
Okay. You're married?
Yes.
Children?
6 children.
Mazel tov. Where are they in life?
I got married at age 35, so I have younger kids. 7 to 14 are the oldest 5, and then I have a 2-year-old that keeps us busy.
Isn't that wonderful? What's your wife do?
My wife, Jessica, is an immigration attorney. And my mother is a retired now immigration judge who had kids in 4 different decades.
Wow.
7 kids total. I have one of 7.
Wow. She must be very proud of you and the home you've created.
Thank God we have a great relationship.
That is lovely. What's your sense, again, we're talking still about Arizona. Well, Boca Raton is part of the Florida community, so I assume it's a different kind of community. But when you were in Arizona, when you were in Phoenix, what was your sense of the general Jewish commitment to the State of Israel?
I think that most Jews are very concerned about Israel and very committed to Israel. And I think, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are assimilated, and they have no connection to the State of Israel and to the Jewish people. And that is something that we're at the National Council are going to try to work on. But I think that many of the ones who are active care strongly about it, and there's a consensus in the community about it. Mm-hmm. And I got along and worked well with pretty much everyone in the Phoenix community. And
what about young people? And now I'm asking you about this in a broader context, not simply about your experience in Phoenix, but you've been with Young Israel for some time here in very different capacities, and now you are the national president. One of the things that concerns American Jews in general is the extent to which the next generation, our young people, will be committed, first of all, to a sense of Jewishness, and second, to a real commitment to see the State of Israel supported and be secure and have a wonderful and enduring future. I want to know your instinct here and your experience as to what you encounter when you're talking to and you're with younger Jews, be it in Arizona or in Florida or anywhere you travel as national president.
Yeah, it's a very important topic. I think it applies really to Jews of all ages, but young Jews are the most alienated, according to the studies that have come. And I think that we need to reach them in stronger ways. We have to deal with a lot of the fundamentals that convinced me to become more interested in Judaism, of the belief in God and God's hand in the world, and things aren't by chance and by accident. And it's just it's something that we have to work on campuses to reach them as well. And I think Birthright is a tremendous vehicle that's getting them to Israel. And part of the problem is we need better follow-up. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have a great story to tell. It's a matter of getting them to hear our story. And I think that with the technology of today, there's more ways to reach them. And I think that we need to work on those different ways to reach these people.
Do you feel Young Israel itself is having any success reaching the next generation?
What we've just done is we haven't announced it as publicly yet with a press release, but we're going to be. But we just hired a Rabbi Yaakov Cousins from Esha Torah, and he is going to be part of what he's going to do is work on outreach activities to reach young people as well. And one of the things we're going to try to do is get our synagogues to do page turners in the shuls, to make it so that it's easier for people to follow along the service. That the art scroll sitter that most of our shuls use has English with Hebrew in it, and but people, they come in and they can't follow along, but at least with the page turners they'll be able to know what page they're on. And we're going to try to have more lecturers that deal with the fundamentals of Judaism and have more questions and answers. We want people to ask questions. The Pesach Seder is about asking questions. And I think if people feel that they can have their questions asked, I think there are answers for these questions, and that's what we're going to try to reach them.
Okay. Number one, that's wonderful. Number two, it is such an interesting insight you've shared with us. And I should tell our audience, before we went on camera, Farley and I had a chance just to speak a little bit together off camera, and we were talking about teaching Hebrew and Jews being comfortable with the Hebrew language. We were talking about From the Aleph Bet here on Shalom TV. And you know, Farley, there is sort of a general notion that in Orthodox synagogues, and therefore in young Israel synagogues, everybody who walks in the door is, number one, comfortable with comfortable with Hebrew, and is totally fluent in the prayers, and would not have a problem knowing what page the service was on at any given time. I want you to explain why. Well, I want you to explain better what the reality is, even in the young Israel congregations, and why you say it's important to make people feel even more at home, those who are coming to young Israel synagogues. Well, and you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sure. The part of what we're seeing is that the two biggest growing groups for the Jewish community in the United States are the unaffiliated and the Orthodox. And so we need to reach these Jews before they disappear. And one of the things is make things easy and accessible to them. And that if someone walks into a synagogue, they can follow along. We're going to also try to have our families, especially, to invite these people for Shabbat meals, bring them into their home, and help teach these people about the beauty of the religion. They're leaving a religion they don't even know about.
Okay, but I would imagine that if someone were to come into a young Israel synagogue, an Orthodox synagogue, they would be there for a reason. Something would have drawn them. And again, the general notion is they would come with a knowledge base. You're suggesting that people are coming to young Israel synagogues without that knowledge base.
What I'm saying is this: most people come into the synagogue, clearly are members and clearly have a knowledge base. But people come in for a bar mitzvah, for a bat mitzvah, for different occasions, and people want to just check out a place and see it for the first time, or had an interest coming. And those people, they need to be helped taught. And we want people to be more observant of the people sitting next to them, and also to have a mindset so when they come in to have a friendly environment. I like to have the shuls invite people, say if you need a place for a Shabbat meal, if you're available for a place, that they're going to be able to find a place to go, and to create a better system in our synagogues, and we're going to work on it from a national level to a local level to work with them to make it easier for people who don't know to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm. I want to take one half step back. You talked movingly about what really was the transformation you experienced that moved you into more observant Jewish life and a greater commitment to the state of Israel. And you also talked a moment ago about how one of the things you'd like to see is other Jews who may be unaffiliated or unengaged, to bring them in also because they should understand more about the Jewish notion of God. And there will be people who will be really touched by what you're saying. There are also people for whom the notion of a personal God, as you're describing it, simply is not relevant to them. And I want to make sure I understand the extent to which you would say that even if an individual is still searching, is unsure, is in some way ambivalent, they are still welcome in a young Israel synagogue, and you would still find there to be ways other than God to bring people into Jewish life.
What the young Israels provide are communities. People without it, not outside of a young Israel, outside Orthodox areas, are not generally, a lot of them are not in communities, because in the Orthodox area they all live near each other. I think a lot of people want to be part of a community. One person told me they had a child with health problems, and the doctor said, you need to be in an Orthodox community. They will go out there, and they'll be supportive to you. When my wife had a baby, and then we had people give us meals for a week afterwards, and for 2 weeks afterwards. When during Shiva, unfortunately, when my father passed away, lunch and dinner every day they brought to our house. It was tremendous, the support, the visiting, and what people do for you. So I want people to experience what a community is like, of living and being part of it, where everyone cares about each other. And so I think people don't know that. For the people who don't really have a belief in God yet, I think in my view is that I want them to be able to ask questions. The Pesach Seder is about asking questions. Is that no question, a bad question is the one that's not asked, because there are answers for a lot of these questions, but people are afraid to ask, and I want them to be comfortable to ask them.
What's the relationship you believe should exist between, for example, Young Israel and the other movements of Judaism, Reform Judaism, Conservative Judaism? You said you grew up as a conservative Jew, but at the moment, what would you like to see the dynamic between the movements be?
Well, I think we get along. I'm part of the Conference of Presidents, been on the Conference of Presidents trips 2 years in a row, to France a year ago and Spain this past year. And we get along with each other. I like to have cordial relationships. And I think that that's an important part. I don't know fully how much to be engaged outside of that type of situation, but I think it's important that everyone should get along.
Is there anything inauthentic about a Jew who wants to be part of a Reform congregation or a Reconstructionist congregation or a conservative congregation?
A Jew is a Jew, and and so we, I think that I don't like when people judge people because they don't know their own background, situation, where they came from, what they've accomplished in their lives. And again, God is the one who judges, and we don't know God's judgment fully. And so, but at the same time, look, we know people who've done extraordinary things, and we know that that's the right thing to do. And people save lives, people do different things like that. We know those are great people. We do have certain basic standards of what it is to do, but also we judge very much how someone treats each other. And that's an important part of a person, is if they're a kind person to each other.
I hope everybody's hearing you, Farley. I think you're 100% right. Whatever else the Jewish tradition asks of us, it asks first for us to be as lovely and kind and sweet a person as we can possibly be. What about Israel for you? Do you go there often?
Well, the Conference of Presidents now, we're going each year, and it's tremendous to go, and it's a tremendous, amazing country.
You know, the Pew Report showed that within the Orthodox world, the Orthodox community here in America, there's an enormous commitment to the State of Israel. It was interesting to see that while there is absolutely commitment across the board, the greatest commitment for Israel comes from within the Orthodox community. And it seems to me that that is one of the strengths that the Orthodox world has been able to share with the Jewish community at large. And one of the things I was curious about was the extent to which, in the congregations you have been part of, whether you feel there is not simply a support for the State of Israel, but Israel is facing so many complex problems, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is only one of them. To what extent do you feel that your membership is aware, educated, and in some way involved in the discussion, even within your own synagogue and your own community, about the very complex issues that are confronting the State of Israel every day?
You know, there's always kind of a funny thing that at the Shabbat table we feel like all the major issues are decided for our members. I think that they're very knowledgeable, much more knowledgeable than other denominations members in the sense of Israel, what's going on, what's happening, following it. When I went to different shuls, every time I go to services, morning and evening, they say Tehillim, they say Psalms for the three boys. They should be found. It's like a set thing, an accepted thing, and that everyone cares about them. And in many of the Young Israel shuls, we always say the prayer for the State of Israel, pray for the soldiers of Israel, and there is a connection. And a lot of our families have people in Israel, people even in the army, and people living. My brother made Aliyah, my baby brother, who's now 32 years old, and he lives in Tel Aviv, and so I stay in touch with him closely, and so a lot of people in our shuls like that, and they go to learn in Israel. A lot of them are after high school, so there's a tremendously close connection, and we hope, especially with the birthright trips, that other Jews get that connection as well.
To what extent are you supportive of a concept of a two-state solution, somehow sharing the land with the Palestinian people?
I'm opposed to a two-state solution. I think that it's been tried for now 70 years, And I believe in the Einstein theory that try to do the same thing over again and expecting different results, the definition of insanity. There is first of all, to give up land will make Israel less secure. It is really kind of a fundamental, obvious situation after we see what happened with Gaza, and we see now with the kidnapping, that the areas that Israel has given up has become safe havens for terrorists. There is nothing to think that any other areas would be that way as well. Now that the missiles are being fired, more land makes the missiles closer. They could hit Ben Gurion Airport, which would be a disaster. And so the only argument people make for giving up land, and no one thinks that the state would be a peaceful state. If they don't have a state yet and they're already not peaceful, why would you think giving them a state would make them peaceful? So to me, it just wouldn't work. It wouldn't be successful. And the only argument people give for it is demographics, and the demographics are changing and moving in Israel's side anyways.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I understand exactly what you've said, but I didn't ask the question well. I want to ask it one more time. I have seen an evolution within the state of Israel. At one point, and it was not necessarily because of Oslo, but it was after Oslo, and then it was at moments when there was some hope that there could be a real peace. At that point, there was about 85% of the Israeli people who said, conceptually, if there were honest, real peace, there would be no problem ideologically to give up part of Eretz Yisrael, which at the moment is called the West Bank. That if there were real peace, the Israeli people were absolutely ready to carve up some of the West Bank and create a Palestinian state. What then happened was it became clear that there was nobody on the other side who was serious about living in peace with the state of Israel. And as a result, the numbers are very different, not because people are against it ideologically, but they just don't think it's practically possible. And what you said right now was, basically there are people who don't want to make peace with us. I wanted to know ideologically whether if, in fact, lo and behold, there was a revolution in the Arab world, and you could have a Palestinian state that would not be hostile to the state of Israel. It is something you and I cannot imagine at the moment. But I'm asking you to imagine it for the purposes of this question. Would you in that instance be willing to, at the moment, share part of the land of Eretz Yisrael by creating a Palestinian state on the West Bank?
Yeah, in a situation which I think is not a real situation,
yes,
but in the hypothetical they're given, I would be opposed to it because I believe this is the land for the Jewish people. It's where our forefathers are buried, and land that was given to us by God, and that it's our land and we should not give it to them. Now, if you would read and Google things I wrote from 1993, from the time of Oslo, everything I wrote you could read today and say, well, he's pretty accurate about what he thought would happen. I wasn't caught up in the myth of Oslo. I don't believe that any of those things would work. And but at the same time, I'm opposed to it because I just think that also I think for Israel's security, even if you had a peaceful type of situation, I think that it's just not a easy situation land-wise. People always say contiguous Palestinian state, and it's like, well, if they're contiguous, then Israel's not contiguous. You can't have both being contiguous. And but I'm opposed to it because I believe this is our land, and it should not be. They have 22 states.
But that's not the issue for you. They could have one. You still would feel the same way.
Well, yes, I would feel
right.
the same way
yeah.
even if it was with one.
Yeah, I think what's important, and it's one of the things that I want to make sure the audience understands, there are certain people who have a very legitimate stand that all of Eretz Yisrael belongs to the Jewish people, and that therefore it's not about whether they'll live in peace with us. For you, it's not about that. For you, it's about, even if they would live in peace, you do not want a Palestinian state because you don't believe, you're not of the mindset of the, that has been historic from the 1930s on, the Jews will share the land because there are two peoples in the land. For you, it's Jewish land, and whether they would or would not make peace with us, you don't want to give up that land.
I agree. That is a situation. Right? I happen to think that it's obvious that they don't want it. They want to destroy Israel, but
At the moment, you're right.
It is a and so that other people don't have to agree with me on this issue, but I think they have to agree on the issue of the fact that they clearly they still want to destroy Israel and they can't make peace with them.
What is it you would like American Jews to know, American Jews in general, or Americans in general, that for you is the brilliance of Israel, setting aside the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Israel is a miracle in so many ways. I want you to articulate from your perspective, what is it about Israel that thrills you, Farley?
I think that the sense of here in America and other places, you feel like, oh, I need to have security for our synagogue, security for our Jewish institutions. And in Israel, it's Jewish soldiers, it's a Jewish country. It's, we visited a military base, the Conference of Presidents, and someone said, you could be making a lot of money in high tech with your abilities. And he said, I wake up every day knowing I'm defending our homeland, our country. And that is just an extraordinary thing. And just to see the sites from the Bible of all the different areas in Israel, it's just it's mind-boggling, really, that everything kind of comes to life of what you read about. And the fact that the Jewish people returned after 2,000 years, it's just an amazing, people just, they see something exists, they don't understand the miracle behind it. Mm-hmm. And especially to happen so soon after the Holocaust, such a devastation, and then to come back like this, it just is not a normal situation. And now the high tech, I mean, you're fighting wars nonstop, you have terrorism, you have all these different things, and yet now all of a sudden you become a high-tech centerpiece in the world of a startup nation. It's amazing what Israel's accomplished.
It is lovely to have met you. I wish you kol tuv and hatzlacha in all you do with Young Israel, your family life, your legal practice, and you're making a real contribution to Jewish life. You should be very proud. I'm proud to have you here at this table, and I hope every now and then we get a chance to speak to each other. Farley, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Doing a great job here with the show.
Thank you. Farley Weiss, National President of the National Council of Young Israel. And again, Farley is also the president of the law firm of Weiss and Moy in Scottsdale, Arizona. Of course, as always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.